Welcome back, hunters, to the second group of winged wyverns list, or as I refer to them as the grounded wyverns. I have named them the grounded wyverns due to their almost non-existent flight capabilities and a strong preference for fighting on the ground. Speaking of the ground, Diablos is the king of ground-style combat. He can effortlessly burrow into the ground and pop up unexpectedly, but his real danger comes from his deadly horns and his spiky tail. For those of you that are just now joining me, I have embarked on a mission to scientifically rank all the monsters in Monster Hunter Sunbreak by measuring key determinants of difficulty that include how many potions I use, how many times my palico or followers heal me, how long it takes me to kill the targeted monster, and how many hearts I receive. An example of my previous hunt where I did this is posted above in the card. But before I go much further into Diablos, I want to mention a special guest with me today to go through the grounded wyverns with me and provide a different weapon perspective. Kylan has graciously agreed to replicate my study design with his own longsword. At the end of each section, I'll feature some of his clips and his words of wisdom, and at the end, I'll have compiled lists of data for his runs as well. But back to Diablos. For many, he is the first true wall hunters encounter in various Monster Hunter games due to his insane physical damage. Luckily, once you learn his attack patterns and treat him like a charging bull, you can smash his horns in and cut off his tail pretty consistently as a GS user. This ground type has flappy little worthless wings and caused me to use 7 potions, 10 palico heals, and an average clear time of 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
I didn't really know how to deal with him utilizing charge attacks, and learning his moveset took quite a large amount of time and failed quests, as one misstep can completely deplete your health bar. He's fast, he's very strong, and he is aggressive. It's my job as a longsword blade master to utilize a monster's moveset against it, and that was quite a process to learn when you're getting instantly deleted by one move. He's not forgiving, he's tough, got a decent amount of health, and he aims to cart you as fast as possible, as often as possible. Diablos, I would confidently say, is probably a very significant wall for many a green hunter.
Now, the familial resemblance here is uncanny with this rock dragon. Basarios is hands down one of the coolest looking monsters in Monster Hunter, and has some very unique properties to go along with him, one of which being encased in a nearly impenetrable exterior shell. He's easily one of the most armored monsters I've ran across in this study so far, and there's hardly any weak spots. The few that he has includes his head, which half the time I can't reach, and occasionally his wings, which also great swords have a hard time reaching. He does go through a phase where he turns bright red and shoots out magma while becoming more vulnerable to attacks. His stomach is a curious organ because it can release a mysterious gas that can either put you to sleep, burn you, or poison you. Overall, in terms of difficulty, he's basically a massive take with low lethality. Taking down a couple Basarios took 3 potions, 8 alternative healings, and a kill time of 7 minutes and 8 seconds.
Basarios is a rather interesting monster for me. His design is unique, and I can appreciate it, even if it's not my favorite type of design for wyverns. I, for one, like things that have sharp teeth. His ability to be able to use 3 different types of ailments against you is pretty cool, honestly. Fireblight, poison, and sleep. Such an interesting choice of kit for a rock monster. His hit zones are the most tedious thing about him. Once you break his chest, or any of the parts you're focusing, it becomes a lot easier. But the dude has a lot of armored points to bounce you off, and be able to follow up with a counterattack. He doesn't have a crazy high health pool, or intense heartbreak thresholds, so he's not entirely tanky, per se. Seeing how he is a juvenile monster, technically, and hasn't had time to mature into his hardest form. He's definitely not a difficult monster, and he's not meant to be a wall. He's meant to teach you how to approach fights differently instead of being only DPS hit monster as much as I can and smack it as fast as I can focused. He's a good monster.
TUing our trend with winged wyverns that don't actually fly, we run into one of the most landlocked monsters in the game, Tigrex. Fun fact, Tigrex is the only monster that I know of that can hurt you by screaming. His signature move is when he eerily opens his mouth wide and creepily crawls toward you like a titan. In previous games, this was almost guaranteed to hit you as a GS user, especially if you were locked into attack. Luckily, Sunbreak allows you to wire bug away or power sheath. Despite this, he can still be very dangerous and easily could have snuck in a card on one of my runs if I wasn't careful. Take for example this Barioth, who decided to tag team me a bit. Tigrex would have easily gotten the killing blow here, but my Palamute paralyzed him in the last second. Overall, he caused me to use 3 potions, 10 heals from allies, and an average clear time of 6 minutes and 36 seconds.
Tigrex relies on being an absolutely relentless powerhouse. Tigrex is all about trying to constantly overwhelm you. The charges that can go back and forth consistently, and then sometimes switch up into a spin, or he'll suddenly back up into a rock throw. He got a new wind-up slam move, too, to take you by surprise that he can chain into other moves in his kit as well. All in all, I'd say that Tigrex is more difficult from a base standard, as not a lot of monsters are so constant attack-minded, and that can be really difficult to adjust your playstyle to. As a longsword user, knowing when you're going to get hit and when you need to hesitate really plays into how you face Tigrex, so adopting a let them come to me mindset is your best route to success.
None of the other monsters in the game compares to this monstrosity. This slimy pale creature is hands down one of the most unnerving monsters created in all of the Monster Hunter series. Kizu is a creepy creature that likes to lurk in caves and elongate his neck to great lengths. He doesn't fly, but he can hop and temporarily cling to the ceiling. Here he can shoot down giant balls of electricity and smack you with his neck. I'll admit one of his redeeming features is his ability to harness electricity and shock the ever-living out of you. It's a unique feature, especially for the Winged Wyvern class, and there's only one more that I can think of that I haven't reviewed yet that has the power to harness electricity. He's normally encountered pretty early on in the game for hunters and can be problematic for novice hunters and those that are under-geared, but fighting him in in-game equipment does trivialize the fight quite a bit. As a GS user, he's pretty easy to hit compared to the other Winged Wyverns. He's slow enough to stick to, and his hitboxes are fair. My Kizu hunt took 3 potions, 6 friendly heals, and was killed in 4 minutes and 16 seconds on average.
Kezu is a rather loathed monster by someone such as myself. That's just nitpicks on a personal level. No music playing, an absolutely disgustingly designed monster, and so many annoying screams that have very little time to prepare against them. Kezu has its fair share of problems, like having bouncy hit zones, where you not only don't do very much damage on those parts, you can bounce off if you drop a single sharpness level, for example, white to blue. And that's in places that most other wyverns are pretty weak, like the tail. It also screams at random intervals to, at least attempt to, interrupt your animations and get you to sit still or artificially prolong its fated death.
Now perhaps the most agile winged creature is the one that always hides in the shadows and lurks in the forests. I am referring to, of course, Nargacuga. Nargacuga is very swift, and his weapon of choice is his spiky tail, which he loves to slam up and down and all around. An interesting note about Nargacuga's anatomy is that even once you slice off his tail, he is still quite effective at using its stub to damage hunters. In fact, even up to 1 foot proximal to the severed appendage contains spines that still inflict damage. He can also choose to shoot out spikes too if he wants to, but he doesn't do that often. From a GS perspective, Nargacuga, while fast, is not quite deadly enough to be a real threat. He's a bit of a nuisance to pin down, and it's often not worth the trouble trying to set up a strong arm stance to counter him, because by the time the counter registers and the sword is lifted to charge, he's already gone. That being said, Nargacuga did cost me 2 potions, 9 Palico heals, and had a clear time of 5 minutes and 52 seconds.
Nargacuga relies heavily on a lot of misdirection in her moveset. For example, Narga will sometimes hop once and then bounce, but on another occasion, it'll hop a second time, making sure to land behind your camera, and then pounce, knowing that it's out of your view. Same could be said for her tail slam. Sometimes it's once, sometimes it's twice, even when enraged.
Perhaps the only thing that would make Nargacuga more deadly was if he was able to completely stealth, even for a little bit. Maybe even if his damage and health was increased, and perhaps a poison was added to his spikes. Well, have no fear, because Lucid Nargacuga has this and more. The only other monster that I'm aware of that has stealthing capabilities is Chameleos. Ironically, Chameleos also attacks with poison, but in a different style. Lucent's poison attacks come in a variety of onslaughts that include a barrage of linear spikes in the ground to raining concentric circles of poison falling from the sky. Luckily, his poison is not to the level of potency of Chameleos or Golden Raytheon, which would be classified as venom, but it can still cause some major damage. Speaking of damage, he stays true to his base form's attacking patterns. It is a bit harder to dodge whenever he couples the tail slam with his stealth, though. The previous comment about the futility of strong-arm stancing Nargacuga needs to be reiterated here as well. I pulled off around 5 counters and none of them led to a successful follow-through. He's just too fast. Lucent is by far the strongest grounded winged wyvern, with his deadly fast moves, enhanced poison attacks, and substantial health pool. And over my 2 hunts I used 10 potions, 20 off hills, and slayed the monster in 11 minutes and 53 seconds.
Lucent has a much higher value in health pool and part break thresholds than its cousin, Nargacuga. I rely a lot on part breaks that guarantee staggers or knocks, which is why I aim a lot for the arms on winged wyverns, seeing as they almost always guarantee a knock. Lucent's utilization of its cloaking properties add on top of Narga's already misdirection-based moveset. Lots of variations in the moves to take you by surprise, or lack of visual contact with the monster, so you don't know when exactly to prepare for a hit, which forces you to learn the timings on each cloak to better prepare yourself against the incoming damage. Add poison on top of that, and it becomes an even deadlier foe, like a full-blooded true assassin. It's not just that it uses the poison on all of its attacks though, but it makes sure to throw its poison spikes in ways that are almost area denial-like, to try to put some breathing room between it and you. While doing so, it'll also give itself time to wind up its next attack to take you by surprise while you're focused on its poisonous rain. Add all of that on top of the fact that it can really hit you like a truck strapped to a freight train, and you've got yourself a top contender for most difficult winged wyvern.
We made it to the data section, fam. Here we get to see the big picture of not only the grounded wyvern data, but the other 18 monsters previously studied too. Real quick, here's the raw data of the ground wyverns from the 6 that I just talked about. And you may notice, this is the first video where I had no carts across the board. As promised, here's the raw data from my fellow longsword hunter. This collaboration was a good test for my experiment's external validity. If my experiment is designed well, it should hold up and give similar results when applied to other hunters with different weapon classes, or those with different individual skill levels. One major difference in our data was the simple fact he was more apt at taking less damage than me across the board. Our kill times were similar, but he played so much more eloquently than my brute and at times reckless playstyle. You can see his scores were almost identical to mine across the board, particularly in the regards to the upper and lower bounds with Lucent and Kizu respectively. But there's a very interesting difference between our Tigrex and Nargacuga scores. And after talking to him, we believe the difference comes from Kylan's ability to predict Tigrex's attacks and respond better as a longsword user, compared to Nargacuga's more chaotic playstyle. I get hit either way when I play, and therefore it makes sense that the monster capable of higher throughput damage is going to rank higher for me as a GS user. Now on to the tier list. Alright, coming in dead last is Kizu with 6 points. No pity was taken on the ugly. Barely above him, just due to his longer clear times, was Nargacuga. Leading forward is Basarios with 9 points and Tigrex with 12. Tigrex is at the difficulty at which I felt that carts were plausible. Diablos unsurprisingly is near the top with 15 points, and coming at the very top is Lucent Nargacuga with 18 points. Now putting all these monsters in my comprehensive tier list, we get a final breakdown as follows. There's a little bit of wiggle room between the ranks depending on how broad or narrow I assign each point interval, but the arbitrary 13-point separation for this version of the comprehensive tier list led to an adequate spacing for most categories. I do see a trend going forward, which is an expected one, and that trend is that the middle difficulty will have the largest amount of monsters in it. This pattern does form a Gaussian distribution, which in my opinion is a healthy sign of the game's difficulty. What this bell curve will show is that the majority of monsters are moderate difficulty, with outliers being super easy ones, and then super hard ones. There is only one set of winged wyverns left. Tune in next time for the final edition of this highly varied species. As always, I appreciate my viewers and hope that these videos cause you to like and subscribe. Also, again, a special thanks to Kylan for his masterful longsword work and his contribution. I will put all his contact information in the description below. Until next time, everyone.